In this lesson, we're going to continue working with fractions, but we're going to be adding mixed numbers. All right? So, for instance, this is an example out of your book. If someone asks you to find the sum of 1 5/8 and 3 1/8. All right, we line them up, and first we add the fractions. Luckily, we were given fractions that have the same denominator, so we just had to add the numerators. Then we add the whole numbers. 1 and 3 was 4. And then we simplify the fraction part. And 6 and 8 are both divisible by 2, so that reduces down to 3/4. We have the whole number 4 and 3/4. So let's take a look at some problems that are like that. Number 1. Oops. I have the whole number 16 and the mixed number 6 and 1/5. Be sure that when you're doing this that you line up the whole numbers and you line up the fractions. Now, it doesn't really matter which group you do first, but I'm going to do the fractions first. I have no fraction here, so that's 0, and I add 1/5 to it, so I get 1/5. Then I add my whole numbers. 6 and 6 is 12. Carry the 1. The fraction cannot be reduced, so I have 22 and 1/5. Remember to look for the mixed number tool, and you can use the arrow keys or the tab key to move from one of those boxes to another. All right, let's look at this one. We have 127 and 4/7. We're going to add 58, and we don't have a fraction part. So when I add 4/7, I have nothing to add to it, so I just get 4/7. It's as if we added 0 to it. I add 7 and 8 for 15. Carry the 1. 1 and 2 is 3. 3 and 5 is 8. Bring down the 1. I have 185 and 4/7. Okay. In number 3, we have 9 and 5/8 plus 5 and 7/8. I do have fractions for both of the numbers. They have a common denominator of 8, so I add 5 and 7 for 12. That is 12/8. I add 9 and 5 for 14. Now I've got to do a couple of things here. I'm going to take the fraction 12/8. I notice two things about it. I notice it's improper. It's bigger on top than bottom. And I notice that it can be reduced. You can handle that in any order you want. If I take care of the reducing first, 4 is a common factor to the top and to the bottom, and I will get 3/2. Now, because it's top heavy, it's an improper fraction, I have to change it to a mixed number, so I'm going to divide 2 into 3. It goes one time. 1 times 2 is 2. Subtract for 1, that's my remainder. This is 1 and 1/2. 1 is the whole number. 1/2 is the fraction. So now let's go back to the problem. I have 14 and I need to add to it 1 1/2. 1 1/2 is a name for the fraction. This becomes a total of 15 1/2. I only will be adding on to the whole number when my fraction part can be changed into a mixed number. All right, now the next example that I have, and it does come out of your textbook, says what if you added 12 and 5/6, this is just an example out of the book, and 7 and 3/8. All right, 6 and 8 the common denominator, the least common multiple. You can do it by listing factors. You can do it with factor tree. You can do it any way you want, but we need to get a common denominator. I'll keep my whole number 10. I'll keep my whole number 7. The common denominator for 6 and 8 is 24. 6 goes into 24 4 times, and 4 times 5 is 20. You can see that the author writes it a little differently, but does the same thing. Then 8 goes into 24 3 times, and 3 times 3 is 9. Now when I add the fractions for 29 24ths, and I add the whole numbers for 17. The fraction part is improper. I can't have a mixed number with an improper piece. So I will go and divide 24 into 29. It goes one time. Multiply for 24, subtract for 5. That's my remainder. So this is 17 plus, let's see if I can scoot over just a little bit, 1 and 5 24ths. There's the 1, there's 5 over 24, and that's what the fraction is equal to. That means that my final answer is 17 and 1 is 18 and 5 24ths. And if you look over here, you will see exactly the same things. All right, let's go back and see what some of our problems are. And give myself maximum room to work these out. I like to do my problems vertically. 6 and 2/9, 3 and 2/5, and I'm adding these. The first thing I have to do is get a common denominator for 9 and 5. You can do that however you want. The common denominator turns out to be 45. So I'm going to have 6 and something over 45. I'm going to have 3 and something over 45. So my least common denominator for 9 and 5 was 45. Now 9 goes into 45 5 times, and 5 times 2 is 10. 5 goes into 45 9 times, and 9 times 2 is 18. If we add the numerators, we have 28 45ths, and if we add the fractions, we get 9. This is not an improper fraction, so it's not going to equal 1 and something. It is a proper fraction. It cannot be simplified because 28 and 45 do not have any common factors, so I'm done. Okay? Let's look at number 5. I think I can work it out right here. I have 9 and 6. The least common multiple, least common denominator of 9 and 6 is 18. So this is 6 and some 18ths. This is 9 and some 18ths. 9 goes into 18 2 times, and 2 times 8 is 16. 6 goes into 18 3 times, and 3 times 5 is 15. When I add these, I'm going to have 31 18ths, and when I add my whole numbers, I get 15. Now this is an improper fraction. You can go off to the side and take care of it. 31 over 18. I'll need to divide 18 into 31. It only goes one time. For 18, subtract, I get a 3 and I get a 1. I get 1 and 13 18ths. So back, this is 15 plus 1 and 18 13ths. So it is 16. Whoops. I'm so sorry. I was looking at this and not writing it correctly. That gives me 16 and 13/18. So you have to do this this process anytime you have a mixed number answer, but the fraction part is improper. Right. Let's look at the next one. I have to get a common denominator. Let's take a minute and show this one. LCD. I have 25 and I have 15. 2 doesn't go into either one of those. 3 doesn't go into 25, but it goes into 15 5 times. Now I can use 5. It goes in there 5 times and in there once. 5 again. 1 and 1. I have the LCD is 3 times 5 times 5, which is 75. The top is going to be 6 and some 75ths. The bottom is going to be 4 and some 75ths. 25 goes into 75 3 times, and 3 times 2 is 6. 15 goes into 75 5 times, and 5 times 2 is 10. When I add, I get 16 75ths. I add the whole numbers, and I get 10. That is not improper. It's fine. It's a proper piece. It cannot be reduced, so that's my final answer. All right, next, I have 8 and 10. 8 and 10, well, let's see about the least common multiple. I have 8, I have 10. You can list the factors of 10, I mean not the factors, but the multiples of 10 and do it that way. Or you can divide by 2. That will give me 4 and 5. Divide by 2, that'll give me 2 and bring down the 5. 2 goes in there once, bring down the 5. Divide by 5. I have the least common multiple, or least common denominator, 2 times 2 times 2 times 5, which is 40. And you might have figured that out a different way. So I have 3 and some 40ths. I have 7 and some 40ths. 8 goes into 45 times, and 5 times 7 is 35. 1 goes into 44 times, and 4 times 3 is 12. When I add these, I'm going to get 47 40ths, and when I add the 7 and the 3, I get 10. Well, this fraction piece is improper. So 47 over 40, going to divide 40 into 47, goes one time. 1 times 40 is 40, and I get a remainder of 7, so it is 1 and 7/40. Back to the problem, I have 10 plus 1 and 7/40. In other words, I have 11 and 7/40. That is my final answer. All right, let's take a look at number 8. All right, in this case, the larger denominator, 27, will work as a common denominator because it is a multiple of 9. So I have 14 and some 27ths. I have 20 and some 27ths. The top fraction, nothing changes. It stays 16/27. But the bottom fraction, 9 goes into 27 3 times, and 3 times 1 is 3. That gives me 19 27ths and add for 34. I cannot reduce that fraction. It's not improper. I am totally finished. All right, I have one more problem to practice with, and it looks like it's going to be a little bit more work because I have 3 fractions. All right, I have the denominators 8, 3, and 4. To find a common denominator, might not be a bad idea to write down 8, 3, and 4. Prime number 2, we're going there 4 times, doesn't go in, goes in there 2 times. Prime number 2 goes in there 2 times, bring down the 3, goes in there once. Prime number 2 goes in there once, bring down the 3 and the 1, and finally divide by 3, 1, 1, 1, tells me I'm done. The LCD is 2 times 2 times 2 times 3, which is 24. I'm going to have 9 and some 24ths, 9 and some 24ths, and 12 and some 24ths. 8 goes into 24 3 times, and 3 times 7 is 21. 3 goes into 24 8 times, and 8 times 2 is 16. 4 goes into 24 6 times, and 6 times 1 is 6. Adding my numerators, I have a 1 and a 6 is 7, and another 6 is 23. Carry the 2. 2 and 2 is 4. That makes 5. I have 53 24ths for the fraction piece. 9 and 9 is 18. 18 and 12 is 30. Oops. All right, I just caught a mistake I made. I have 1 and 6 is 7. 7 and 3, sorry, 7 and 6 is 13. Just carry a 1. 1 and 2 is 3, and that makes 4. So we will go back. This is 43. So I hope you caught that before I did. Alrighty. I have an improper fraction of 43 24ths. So I'm going to divide 24 into 43. It will only go one time. It's 24. Subtract for 19. This is 1 and 19 24ths. So I have 30 plus 1 and 19 24ths, or 31 and 19 24ths. So I did have a mistake in the work, but I caught it as I was looking at it. I had carried a 2 when I needed to carry only a 1, so I hope you caught that mistake even before I did. The fraction was improper, changed it to a mixed number, added the 1 back into the 30, and kept the proper fraction 19 24ths. Okay, it's your turn to practice.